Hi, and welcome to the first edition of our podcast. We are the team at Zone 3 Media. To my left, I've got Ben, and to my right, I've got Sam, and
Hello.
I am Harry. And so today, let's jump in. Today's topic is going to be focused around youth. So just for starters, I wanted to ask each of you what your favourite album is related to youth, or favourite song, and then what your favourite film is related to youth. So I'll start with you, Sam. What's your favourite? You're going for a song, right?
Yeah, I went for a song.
Okay, so what's your favourite song?
So it's called Somewhere Only We Know, which is obviously it's a classic.
Who's it by?
It's by Keane, I'm pretty positive, yeah. And I think it just takes me back in time to like the first relationships where I'm going these little local dates in the park, and yeah, that's I don't know. It creates like a feeling of nostalgia, I suppose, is in me.
Because that song isn't traditionally about youth, right? It's about a separate sort of relationships and.
I think it's like a past relationship. Yeah.
Past relationship, and the fact that you've managed to sort of take that interpretation to your own meaning around youth, is quite interesting. So yeah, Ben, what's your favourite song?
I've gone for an album. I've gone for A Tribe Called Quest's debut album, released in 1990, titled People's Instinctive Travels and the Paths of Rhythm.
Okay, and how does that relate to youth?
Yeah, so it was the first thing they made. The main producer released it on his 20th birthday, but he'd actually done a lot of the production for the tracks when he was in 10th grade, when he was about 16 years old, just using tapes to do it. So it was something that kind of, when you listen to it, it definitely reflects the freshness of his perspective. It's quite alternative hip hop. The group are quite known for like being a defining voice in that early alternative hip hop, and yeah, the songs overall in the album are just quite playful, thoughtful. It's not like gritty, political. It's quite laid back, quite fun, and overall has youthful energy.
Yeah. Okay. Have you got a favourite song on the album?
Oh, it's got to be Can I Kick It?
Can I Kick It?
It's got to be, man.
Yes, you can. Can I Kick It? All right, cool. So then let's move to films. And again, oh wait, no, I didn't do my favourite. I did my album. Yeah, sorry, I lost my input. So my favourite album that sort of reflects youth is by Lorde, and it's called Pure Heroin. And I've been finding myself listening to a lot at the moment, as I find myself in this sort of transitional period as we sort of say goodbye to childhood. And she made it when she was 16. And I think it captures the sort of the essence of what it's like to be 16 perfectly. And you know how sort of as hierarchies, how you view sort of adults and the system, the world around you, sort of stuff we'll get onto. But it just moves me in a sort of quite nostalgic way that, I think that just highlights youth brilliantly. And my favourite song on that album is called Buzzcut Season. And if you guys get the chance, I'd I'd love you guys to listen to the album in the whole, but if there's a song on it that I think you should listen to, yeah, it would be that song.
We'll listen to it during this.
Yeah.
If need be, we can cut it out, can't we?
Yeah, true.
Favourite film then?
Yeah, favourite film.
Start with Ben this time.
Yeah, start with Ben.
So I've got two films actually, kind of almost two sides of the same coin in a bit of a weird way. They're both about the kind of relationship with youth and innocence, and then the fascination with morbidity, and also the tie to darkness that youth will often bring. So the two films I've gone for are Stand By Me, 1986, and then Kids, which I think is 1996 or 1995. I'll have to double check that.
Yeah.
Stand By Me is directed by Rob Reiner. It stars River Phoenix, among a few, Keith Sutherland, and it's just about, broadly, to kind of generalise it, it's about four kids who live in a small town, all come from relatively dysfunctional families, and they hear of a kid that's been killed by a train. And so in the kind of naive hope of becoming local celebrities, they set out to find the body, report the body, and then they're the heroes of the story, is how they think it's all going to go. Yeah. That's the basic premise, yeah.
My favourite part of that film is how it presents the idea of the adventure. You know, that kind of midsummer when you're in between school sort of calendar years, school years, academic years, and you're sort of filling the days with, there's not a lot to do like in terms of schoolwork, so you have complete freedom, and I think that film captures it beautifully, the essence of adventure, and yeah, it stirs quite a strong emotion around what it was like to be that age.
Yeah, 100%.
And the relationships you have around that age and how much friends like that matter at the time. But then when you grow up, they're sort of just distant memories. As you see, the bit where he finds out that River Phoenix's character's died.
Yeah,
and it's just a moment from the past where he's like, he goes back to his childhood just for a fleeting moment. Yeah. And sits with that feel. That scene, honestly, that it's right at the start of the film, so you don't understand the context. But then when you watch the entire film, that scene comes back to you and is like, that's.
Because it's all about that golden age, isn't it? Of when you're about 12, when you're that kind of pre-teen sort of age, and you have a freedom that you can't really comprehend quite how free you are at that point yet. And life hasn't really started, but life is just kind of beginning.
Exactly.
It's a beautiful time in everyone's life.
And how shitty older siblings are.
Yeah, shit older siblings, parents are shit, older siblings are shit, bullies are shit, everything like that. Yeah, all the trials of young adulthood or just late childhood, I suppose it would be more accurate.
Yeah, you got any thoughts on the film?
I mean, it is like I think it portrays the journey.
The journey.
Which is something that I feel like in my life is, and in our journey, is the bit that we're at. We're not at the top of the mountain. We're very much at the bottom.
Yeah.
And for me, it's like a bit of a coming of age journey film.
Yeah.
And the kind of group dynamic is quite an interesting one as well. From what I remember, there's a bit of a hierarchy, and I think when you're a kid, you start thinking about stuff like hierarchies from a very young age, even younger than the guys in the film.
Yeah. And there's archetypes. You got the intellectual smart kid who's going to go big things. You kind of got Fat Gordy, who's the jester of the group.
It's Gordy's the main character.
Sorry, Gordy's the main character.
One is called Vern.
Vern. Yeah. He's the goofy sort of. Yeah. Gets bullied, but plays an important role in the dynamic. The comedian. The guy with glasses.
Yeah, but he's also, if anything, one of the more tragic characters. Yeah. Because
he gets abused, doesn't he? And then, of course, you've got River Phoenix's character.
Yeah, Chris Chambers.
Yeah, Chris Chambers. Yeah. Who is the tragic hero. Yeah. And, it's an unbelievable film.
It's funny that you mentioned journey, because I think it definitely, one of the kind of main things that it kind of posits, I suppose, by the end is what's more important, the journey or the destination. Because this guy, the main character, Gordy, when he's older, he's in his 40s or something, he's just reminiscing about that. So now at this point, he's a successful author. He's found fame. Stephen King probably very much based the character off his own. He always does that. He always puts the main character as an author. So he is someone who has found success and who has, by all accounts, succeeded in life. He's reached his destination. He's got kids, he's got a family, and he should, by all means, be happy. But you can kind of feel it.
Well, he is probably happy.
He's probably very happy. But yet, so he's reached his destination and he's attained happiness. But yet, you feel like he would give anything to re-experience the journey again and to be with those friends when he was 12. Because the closing line of the film, I've written it down so I don't get it wrong. But I never had any friends later on like the ones I had when I was 12. Jesus, does anyone? Brilliant line to end the film.
That's very good.
I feel like when you get older, you're looking for them relationships that you had. You're trying to recreate them almost when you're like, I'm trying to recreate my 12-year-old friendships with you, and we do in a way by like going playing football and doing like kid things, like having a laugh. Obviously, you drink beer, which makes you the things change.
When you look at our parents and the amount of friends they have, it's not many.
No,
it's actually usually 1, 2, 3.
Close, but
it's not many friends at all, and you don't see them hanging out with them too much. It's mainly their wife or husband.
It takes over, they become
their best friend.
I mean, people from my school that I've not spoken to them for years, like who I thought were going to be best mates.
Yeah, for the rest of your life.
You just life. But it's interesting at what point does life actually chill out? Because we all went to uni and started our own new lives. But from now, do we go through that again, or Are we very much slowing down?
I mean, I guess only time will tell, but I think that the 20s, if anything, are even more exciting than the teens. I think the stuff that happens in the next 10 years will just about echo what happens in... It'll be more career-driven.
Well, that's what I think. I think it's more effective. I think it has more of an impact on the rest of your life than what happens to you in your teens.
Yeah.
I think you see quick and prevalent effects of what you do in your 20s that do have an effect.
And you've become who you are. You've become who you're going to be, whereas when you're in your teens... Becoming, yeah, sure.
Yeah.
Your teens are basically
near
a weird, uncomfortable metamorphosis, but then by the time you're 20, you have a bit of a better, more reliable idea of who you are and who you want to be, I suppose.
Yeah.
So when you meet someone, you don't think, ooh, is this person like... You're not thinking from that high school society perspective of, is this person a good social tool? You just think, do I like this person? Do I want to hang out with this person?
Yeah.
And if it's no, then you know that.
And
you never kid yourself into hanging out with someone you don't want to hang out with, because it just doesn't happen.
All right. What's your film?
Yeah. So to move on to moving on quickly, the Dead Poets Societies.
Yes.
Is actually the film that I've chosen today, plus my favourite film. If anyone ever asks me that question, it's always the Dead Poets Society. I watched it the first one time and I loved it, and then I watched it a second time with my dad. Yeah. And it's a film that I always say to people, if you can, watch it with your dad. Yeah. Because it shows that, like, you're sort of in your... I mean, it's like a prep school, right? You know, for anyone that doesn't know, the Dead Poets Society, it's basically a group of lads... And they
no spoilers.
Spoilers are coming up, so spoilers are coming. So if you haven't heard it, skip a minute. But the Dead Poets Society, group of like a class, right? And you get the archetypes that you spoke about before. They get a new teacher, which is played by Robin Williams, who is quite sort of... He has a different approach to teaching, right?
Yeah, he's
the school.
Unique in his approach.
And the boys kind of... He sort of encourages the boys to rebel in a way and go to the sort of secret part in the woods and have fun. But then the repercussions happen when the sort of the turning point of the film is when the guy sort of commits suicide after his dad, the pressure of his dad. Yeah. And that's why I think it's such a good film to watch with your dad, because it's like, you know, your relationship with your father and your mother for that matter, like in them sort of years, I think it's so important because they have so much influence over your life.
Yeah, exactly.
But then you get to this age, I think you do naturally drift. But I think it's important for a father to like support, and in positive and in whatever ways the kid wants, even if it's not what he wants. Yeah. Whereas the father doesn't do that because he doesn't want him to act, and he thinks it's so silly and it destroys him to the point of death. So that's my film for youth of this topic.
So what aspects of you do you think it targets?
I think like fitting in, identity, and I think rebellion is one of the biggest ones, and taking like being a bit rebellious, and testing the waters and just having like a bit of a laugh, you know, and not so in the serious world of education.
I always like how, particularly in that film, it ties in culture to the discovery of manhood. Like these guys are very much on the cusp of kind of becoming the young adults. You know, they're like, what are they supposed to be? Probably 16, 17, something like that. And the way the teacher introduces them into poetry, which before they're all like, you know, lame, not interested, and he introduces that poetry, which is just stories really, but in the context that it connects to them, and they kind of realise that these guys who wrote these poems aren't just dead people. They were boys, young men like them once as well. The way it kind of ties those emotions together and makes them really understand the poetry and the kind of the art and those stories that were being told, I thought was a pretty clever part of the movie, because that's what drives it all. They see and they realise they have more in common with all these poets than they realised. And I think there comes a time in every young dude's life when he finds a piece of media, whether it's an artwork or a story, a movie or a song, that really actually hits you for the first time, and you can relate to the person who made it. And you think, damn, that's what it's all about.
I feel like when you grow up, you take most kids take everything at face value, whereas you get to a certain age and you start looking at the deeper meaning of things. Like art is basically what we're talking about, I think. And you, when you start to appreciate poetry, which is, and that the beauty in poetry and how actually like powerful it is, and I think that's what the film's sort of talking about, isn't it? And it's enlightening them.
Yeah, the relevance, really.
Yeah.
How compatible it actually is to even modern day life. So, yeah.
Well, one of the things I think that I see in the film that I don't see today is exactly that. I struggle to see that sort of same sense of curiosity in a lot of the world today in terms of the generations of youth that are coming after us. And that we'll talk about the role of technology in that a bit later on. But I think it's a very important part of being young and that discovery and searching for the answers when you haven't got many under your belt. And I'm a bit concerned about how that is in today's generation.
Can I add something?
Yeah.
You notice though in that film, and I think is the case in life, it isn't the kids, the protagonists, who do that for themselves. It's the teacher who brings that into their lives. So I think that goes to show that it is that guidance from wisdom from a pre-existent generation that needs to influence that. So I think it is more on. You see these kids and you think, they're clueless, they don't have an idea, but it's not their fault. It's just how they've been conditioned, I suppose.
Exactly.
So it's weird.
And I suppose if you look at what is influencing these days, which is TikTok and Instagram, which there is some pretty good stuff on TikTok and Instagram that I think is quite poetic, but then it's that short form, short burst, next that I think poetry.
Yeah, let's be real though. Like people always make the excuse for TikTok. There's educational material on it. There's useful stuff. At the end of the day,
it doesn't redeem it.
It doesn't. Also, the majority don't use it in that way.
No, it's that.
No one's paid for their algorithm.
You find that if you look for it, but
exactly.
It doesn't come to you.
It doesn't come to you. Because it's addictive to be scrolling through easy sort of dopamine releasing content that just is an easy fix. And I don't sort of buy the defense mechanism of probably TikTok themselves saying there's educational material on it. That's kind of the be all end all there sort of.
I think if you do use it literally for research purposes, like you're looking at tutorials on how to make a podcast, right? And you use TikTok. I think it's actually, traveling is probably it's actually a useful example. When I travel and looking for stuff to do, I will use TikTok and Instagram, but I won't use it definitely not TikTok, because that's for me the most addictive. But I won't use these apps unless there's a purpose, because they're so contagious and so addictive. It's very clever what they've done, I think.
Yeah.
It's like having a shot rather than having a double and coke. They've condensed content to overload, but they've pushed it down into such a small little 5 or 10 seconds that it builds your dependence on that short form, and you think, that's the other thing you want is you want to see.
And you can do more of it.
Yeah, exactly.
And not realise it, and you get too drunk.
Exactly. Yeah, there you go. It's the exact same thing in theory. Yeah.
Okay. Anyway, my film.
Yeah.
My film, like Sam, is also my favourite film of all time, and it is a film called Dazed and Confused by Richard Linklater, and I think it came out in 1990.
Should I research that then?
Nah, 93.
93. Anyway, early 90s. Not important. And I think
93.
Yeah, 93. The key aspects of youth that the film captures is actually, it's just a fleeting, momentary night of what it needs to be. Yeah,
there's no plot.
There's no plot. You just get to be part of a group, part of a scene for a night.
For an instant.
For an instant, exactly. And it's just one night where they finish school for the last time and they're having sort of one last sort of blowout. There's a party and the party gets cancelled, and so they have to find a new party, and it turns out that they have to just basically do it in the wild, in a sort of forest place.
Pre-party.
And what's interesting is it's from the perspective, the protagonist is a guy who's a couple of years younger than everyone else in the sort of the main scene, main group. And through that, I think, it kind of gives it rose-tinted lenses, but in a good way. That, I think it makes it seem more magical. Yeah, he seems to be in awe quite a lot of the time. Like, how did I get here? This is like sick. Like, this is incredible. Like, I'm hanging out with olders.
Is that not so relatable though?
And he has his first kiss. I'm sure he does a bit more.
It's electric.
Yeah, and it's just a beautiful capture of what it means to be in your youth in a specific moment. And it's fleeting. The night ends, and in just the same fashion, I think, as we're discovering, our youth ends.
It's just a thread of moments. It doesn't really start or stop. It's just
exactly.
You just go, and then before you know it, you're not in the place that you were anymore.
Yeah. So following on from where how it's similar to us being where we are now and sort of finishing up with childhood, I kind of want to discuss where we are personally in our youth cycle, in our youth sort of in our stages of youth, because we're definitely towards the latter stage. We're definitely towards the end, I think. I think that a good question to start with is, where does youth end?
It's interesting you asked that, because I spoke to my granddad today on the phone, who's in his 70s, in preparation of this call, and I asked him, when did youth end for you? And he said he still feels like he's 20, in his 20s, although he physically feels in his 70s. So I don't know if it ends. I know it,
but it does. I think it has to.
It depends what you want to define youth as. If you think youth can be childhood, youth can be your mid-30s. If you believe it to be.
I think youth is, for me, reliance on parenting and still feeling the effects of that. Where you're learning, still learning how to be independent. I still think you're in your youth. So
I would say we're kind of out of. I would say I'm not in my youth then anymore.
Yeah,
by that classification.
Yeah, by that classification, but there's still elements I think where you still are probably, or maybe I am.
I consider myself a youth, 100%. Yeah, I think I'm.
There probably still will be elements that are affected, that you are affected by from your parents, and not quite the full independence.
What would you say
that we're seeking?
When would that change? Like a house or a child? Like,
I think, so we're in a stage where we're kind of working out what we're doing, what our path is, and there's still a bit of an unknown.
Yeah.
It's still not clear where we're going to end up. I think, the house is too far down the line, family's definitely too far down the line. From others, I give it a numerical value. I think 26, 27 is, I think that's where it kind of ends. I think when you've got a couple years under your belt of independence like we are now, I think you acclimatise to it, get used to it, and when it properly becomes the norm. That's where I think.
Maybe like a bit of a fun way to think about it is like, once you spend your first Christmas, not with the fam, but with your mates, or
in your own
home, or your partner.
Which I have done, to be fair.
Yeah.
I've spent a Christmas away from the family.
Yeah.
I went abroad one year.
You have definitely, and it's probably subjective. It's probably an individual experience to each person of when that happens. But in terms of, I think, a commonality of what I've observed from older people and generations above us, is it seems to happen around that 27 period.
Well, I think for me, the beautiful thing about the concept of youth is that it's such a relative term.
Yes.
Like, I can look at a 10-year-old kid doing dumb 10-year-old shit, and I'm like, what a youthful 10-year-old. A 50-year-old will look at us and be like, man, look at those guys, they've got it all to come. A 90-year-old will look at a 50-year-old and think, whoa, wish I was 50. But I wish I could walk around and do the things that 50-year-old body can do. Sort of thing. So it's all, I think, we're definitely on the earlier side of the slider, in terms of, let's say, for example, we all live the average life expectancy.
We're supposed to 100.
Yeah,
right?
100.
Yeah. But the way science go,
I'll take 100. Let's say 80. 100 is still only about a quarter of the way through our lifespans, which definitely puts us in what I would call youth. If you look at the lifespan of an animal, it's considered a youth until it's, about halfway through its lifespan, something like that. juvenile.
Yeah, because then you've got sort of 45-year-old men who've never married or never done anything, acting quite youthful, if you know what I mean, and have never seemed to have left their sort of early 20s.
I think there's turning points in your life that force you to become, like, I don't know. Well, okay, so we're saying youth. What's the next? Is it adulthood? Is that what we're going with?
Well, no, I think there's a transition period. It's quite a big transition period.
But whatever that transition period, let's call it like 2 years.
Sorry,
then where do you end up?
An overlap.
But once the overlap's done, where do you end up?
You would have maturity.
I think you would definitely say a 35-year-old is an adult.
Yeah, sure.
That's clear, I think. And I think you'd say a 30-year-old is an adult.
To us,
yeah, it's true. But I think even, people who aren't in their 90s or 70s, the common denominator, I think, would be 30.
Yeah, if you're in your 30s, we can't speak to 30-year-olds but for a 30-year-old, you would think that you see yourself as definitely an adult. If someone treated you like a kid and you're 30 years old, you probably wouldn't be best pleased with that. You'd think, don't condescend me, I'm a grown man, I'm 30. You've lived for 30 years, that's a long time.
Yeah.
You've seen a lot. So I think, by 30, sure, you can be called.
Yeah.
Maybe not mature, but you can be called
mature and youth, I think, and adulthood are different.
Yeah.
I think you'd be a very immature adult. Also, you'd be a very mature youth.
Yeah.
Just for context, we're all 22 and you're 23.
23, I'm
so
23.
That's
Yeah, I'm 23.
Oh yeah, it was your birthday like
September,
yeah. Nice. Cool.
Yeah, cool.
Yeah. So, I think to summarise that, I think to find a key sort of turning point, I think it has to be a characteristic, or like a chapter, I think, defines.
I think maybe, let's say, pushing it out there, when either one or both of your parents is no longer alive, I think then you have to,
Then you're on your own.
become mature. Even if you're like 10 years old when that happens, you have to mature because the world isn't going to parent for you. It's like you need your parents, and when they're gone, then that's the first time in your life that you experience true, not loneliness, but probably independence,
So, the next chapter of our discussion around youth is going to focus on a little theme called the adventure. So, this is a concept actually that I've drawn from Jordan Peterson and Lex Friedman, actually, when they had a conversation briefly about sort of a similar sort of topic that we're discussing about. And he basically details that one of the biggest sort of archetypes around being young is the adventure that lies ahead of you. And Friedman then goes on to say that, any sort of, even though we might all be pretty poor and struggling to make money right now, that any old, rich, heavily rich man would trade their entire finance to gain those years again. And
when you say rich man, just in end of life.
Yeah, end of life. Yeah, he's sort of 80 years old. He's
probably had a great life. Someone who has lived.
Yeah, he's had a great life. I think I can say that with confidence that all of them would trade their entire wealth for years back. And so in that sense, we're at an incredibly exciting time of our lives. And yes, it might be hard. We're not the richest, and we'll probably be the poorest that we're going to be throughout our lives, hopefully, I think.
I hope so.
Yeah. And so in that sense, it might seem difficult. But I think there is joy that comes out of the unknown that lies ahead of us. We can choose whatever path we like.
100%.
So what are your thoughts on that?
It's always very exciting. I think that ties back to a lot of bits about the films that we each mentioned. It's all anything to do with youth is automatically aimed forward, looking into the future. Like, for example, Dazed and Confused. It's set on the last day of school and the first day of spring break or summer break. It could have been set middle of summer, it could have been set at the end of summer, but he chose to set it at the very first day of summer.
Which is a great feeling.
It's an amazing feeling. It's probably one of the best feelings there is as a young person. when you grow up to that phase, but like, yeah, there's nothing like that feeling of when I was a kid and you know that you've just finished. There's 10 minutes left at the end of school, the last day before the 6-week holidays.
Yeah.
It's unreal. It's an unparalleled feeling.
It's like a Friday
Yeah.
on a weekend when you finish work on a Friday.
And that feeling on that day, it's, you know, it's nearly 3:30, bells,
Yeah.
you're just waiting for the bells to ring. That feeling is what youth feels like.
Yeah.
Only retrospectively, you don't really realise when you're young that you're at that point, that starting point of the journey that will be your life.
Yeah.
But that's why it's so nice to see it in films and to watch it back as an older person and be like, yeah, you know, you can look back and you can feel excitement for your past self that your past self never actualised. But yeah, you can definitely.
I think there's a lot of satisfaction and like long-term gratification in achieving things, which is obvious. But I was listening, when I was doing some research for this, I was listening to Joe Rogan, and he said that, you know, when he was a kid, he felt like a bit of a loser. And then he started doing martial arts and realised that he can improve and get better and get into a better position.
Leveling up.
And he felt that. And I feel like that's where the struggle is, because you get to a point where you're sort of at the top of the game and you don't feel that anymore because you can't climb further up the mountain, you know, once you hit
There's
the
kind
peak.
of a tragedy in that.
There's a bit of a tragedy, like
Purpose. Where's your purpose
Now
once
what?
you reach that? Once you reach that stage.
It's isolation. Once you're at the top, you stand alone, don't you?
That's why I just really wonder about people who retire, how they keep motivated, how they keep purpose in their life.
Hobbies.
Yeah, and that's the only thing.
My granddad and grandma, they're both retired, have been retired for quite a while.
Yeah.
They were fortunate enough that they had, you know, good careers.
Yeah.
So they can live relatively comfortably. And I think they still, like my granddad's, I think he turned 70, either last year or the year before maybe, and he's still orienteering regularly.
Okay, first.
Still very like physically active, and it keeps them. They still go on holiday quite a lot, you know. And it's like it's good to see, because I think that's what it comes down to at the end of the day, whether you're going to be old and comfortable and like enjoying being old, or old and thinking I wish I was dead. This is shit. You know, so it's.
Because my father's just reaching that age. He's
old
in
is dad?
He's in his early 60s.
Oh really? Yeah.
And he's within now a few like very close years before he retires. But I think the reason why he hasn't actually retired yet is because he's so concerned about what will get him up in the morning, that because his business and what he does for the business, I think it drives him. And now that his business has entered a different stage, it now belongs to someone else. He's finding himself less and less important, even though he was very high up in his business. He's finding himself very less and less important, to the point where, the business, he says the business actually runs better when he's not so involved. And I think it appears to be that he's, wrestling with actually just cutting it.
The idea of being redundant.
Of being redundant, exactly.
Maybe there's something in, like, you know, I'm using the metaphor of he's climbing down the mountain now.
Yeah, he's
And
reached the peak.
Maybe it's trying to like think, you know what, I've had a good life.
Yeah.
And being comfortable with the success you've had, because if you constantly trying to like be successful and climb, it's never ending. And maybe happiness lies in the struggle, reaching your goal.
Trying to attain.
You've attained it. You know you're sufficient. You can have a life where you can give advice, like maybe your father might do.
Yeah.
Relax a bit more. But some people, I don't think, can, and it's like a bit of a curse.
Because they never reached that peak?
No, I think they reached the peak, but they want to keep going. But there's no more mountains to climb.
It's reaching the peak itself that's the problem.
Yeah.
Like you take a gun dog, a working dog that's been bred to work constantly.
Like a sheepdog or?
Yeah, if you get like some dog like that, very high-strung, very energetic dog, and you just let it sit around the house all day, the dog's going to get depressed, it's going to be unhappy, because that's not what it was designed for. As humans, not only are we social animals, but like we were designed for purpose, or we've evolved to be designed.
Yeah, we've evolved for purpose.
Yeah,
we were a bit hunter-gatherer.
Yeah, you know, but we've always had tasks to do. We've always had jobs. It's always been either get food, or when we sorted that out, farm, or when we sorted that out, start to build stuff. And build, and then now it's to the point where it's like we need engagement. We need something to focus our brains on, because without that, and if you find yourself too comfortable, then that's when you start to get unhappy, depressed, and bored, and especially in old age, you can't just. I don't know. That's you need your friends, you need hobbies and stuff, because otherwise, your brain might start to deteriorate.
Yeah. So this next chapter in our discussion, I think we're going to talk about nostalgia, and kind of a question, an overarching question for this chapter is: are things really better as they appeared then than they are now? Because when you look back, you see things through every sort of in rose tinted lenses, right? Mm-hmm. Everything seems glorious back then and a happier time. Easier time. But is that really the case? And it actually relates more, you can relate that to the arts, with sort of things like Stranger Things that retro bait, sort of, glorify the sort of the 80s. Porn, nostalgia porn. And I think that might have an effect on how we perceive the past.
Retromania. Yeah.
I wonder if there's something in the fact that you understand it.
You understand what?
You understand your past more. You understand them
you have a control over it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you get it. It's something you understand where now it's like, I don't know what's going on, but you understand that you were happy.
Yeah. Okay, for starters, how was everyone's... Let's go to being 16 years old.
Okay.
How was everyone when they were 16 years old?
Well, just started college, and I think, like we all would have, college was obviously an adjustment. You still... I think you think you know a lot, and you think you're a big person, and you think you're who you are, but you're not really. You just got there, and your world opens up a lot at 16 because
you finish your GCSEs.
You finish your GCSEs. You get into that point where you're noticing all the girls, and you're thinking.
That's kind of your first chapter.
Yeah.
I think that's your first important benchmark in life. From what I can remember, you could argue the 11 plus, but I think you're a bit too young. I think finishing your GCSEs and completing your GCSEs is your first important benchmark in life.
Because you're set free, aren't you?
Yeah.
That's the first point when you actually have a say in what you're going to do next. If you don't want to go to college, no one's going to force you to turn to college. If you at 16 years old, and fair play to the people who did, say, I know exactly what job I want to do, I'm going to go ahead and do it. You can go do it. And now you would be doing that job, and you'd be doing that job for the rest of your life. Probably.
Who are earning way more than us, by the way.
Heck, yeah.
At the moment.
But you have direction. You can get I feel like that's the first time when a sense of direction becomes necessary for the next chapter, because even though you think high school's a ball ache when you're in high school and you think, oh, this is shit, I hate having to get up at 6 in the morning and bloody trek to school or whatever, but it provides you with routine that you don't have to question, so you can just comfortably kind of accept it. But then when you're 16 and people say to you, well, what do you want to do next? And you realise, oh, well, I've not thought about it that much. It's quite scary, really, I think, the idea of having it being your own choice for the first time in your actual life.
Yeah. I changed schools. I went to a sixth form college that was far more independent. Like, the learning was far more independent. I went from classrooms of 30 all boys to classes about 5 or 6 mixed. And it was a very different process to education. A private sort of, a rigorous private school system to a much more modern sort of approach to learning. Whereas
so it went from more or less intense?
Less intense.
It went to less intense.
And in fact, I completely collapsed at the independence.
Too much.
I took it for granted, and for the first 2 years, I let it get the better of me.
Yeah.
And still the effects of that.
It's a lot, isn't it?
Yeah.
There's so many different pathways that freedom can send you down. Like I remember at college, there was about 2,000 kids at my college, big college, and there's the kids that are overachievers, that are studying day in, day out. There's the kids who go and fuck it off and go and smoke weed on the lunch breaks and stuff. Yes. And so there's everyone.
Of course, we never did that.
Oh no.
No.
What's weed?
Yeah, I don't even know.
In that sphere, you have so many different things going on. So that's when you start to kind of be confronted with there's an invisible voice saying to you, well, you have to choose a path. This is where you decide which sort of person you're going to be.
And conjoined to that, and what happens at the same time is you start going out.
Like clubbing.
Clubbing was between 16 and 18 when you first start going.
Yeah, I went clubbing in college with.
But house parties were
house parties.
That
was the main thing, wasn't it? Yeah.
You started experimenting with drink properly. I think I took up smoking. It's quite a sort of regular habit around 16, 17.
Drugs appear on the scene.
And
definitely.
Then the big D, drugs. They become quite a prominent feature in your life.
It's the cool
16.
thing. It's the new drinking.
Oh, it was so cool.
Yeah, it's very cool. It's
yeah.
very like it's like the first kid who gets everyone drunk when you're like 14.
Yeah.
The first time you have a beer and the first time you actually feel that little bit of tipsiness and you're like, you can't really believe it. It was that, but on steroids.
Where were you when you had your first drink?
I was in the attic of my friend's house, Ben Bradley.
Okay. Name drop.
What a boy. Yeah, there you go, Ben. Cheers.
And you?
So I was at a house party, and I was like 14.
Yeah.
And obviously the parents didn't give a. They were like, nice family.
Chill.
They were chill with it. So I was like 14. House party.
We were on pear cider.
Yeah. And then for me, my first drink was Malibu, and it was on Peckham Rye Common.
All right.
And I can remember like taking the first few sips and feeling this warm. I can remember it really vividly. Feeling this warm sort of veil, like come over me.
From Malibu.
Yeah, from Malibu.
12%.
From Malibu. Yeah. But I can remember the exact feeling and then getting this buzz. And I can remember the first time getting drunk really well.
Me too.
And it was amazing. It was an incredible feeling, and now it's become a bit more
it's like a chore.
for granted.
It's funny. There was about
I've
got to do it. There was about 6 or 7 of us in my mate's attic that night. So we didn't have. His mum had sorted us out. Bless her, lovely woman. She'd given us like maybe let's call it 2 15-packs, 2 16-packs. There was enough for all of us to get comfortably drunk, and it was pear cider. And in the morning we discovered someone had thrown up.
No one
to this day of the 6 or 7 people in that room, maybe even less, maybe even like 5.
Yeah.
There's still one of us spewed, and I swear to God it wasn't me.
Yeah.
But we do not know who it was.
Do you think that one person knows that it was them, or were they drunk? Where
we weren't that drunk. Man.
We
weren't that drunk. Someone definitely is out there who kept stum about that whole thing. Who didn't say a
And
word in
still
the morning
takes it to
when
their
we were
grave.
like, "Yo, who's been sick?" Someone kept it quiet. Someone was like, "Not me."
Well, someone played along.
Yeah.
It's greasy bastard.
Yeah. There you go.
Yeah, it was.
That's quite a big turning point, because I remember even saying to my dad, "Oh yeah, I've had some booze," and he was like, "Oh."
Yeah, I did not tell my parents.
Yeah.
I
My dad freaked
would
out
get
a
in
bit.
trouble. Yeah,
I think
I was. To be fair, I was 13 or 14.
similar as
It was a bit young to be telling your parents about that.
Yeah, I suppose so. Yeah, when you're about 14, you keep it a little. I probably would have told like my
Supposed to
uncle.
be trying.
Or something.
Yeah, you're supposed to be trying it around 16, aren't you?
Probably
For the first time.
told my uncle to try and be like cool to my uncle, but I probably kept it a bit quiet for my parents.
And for context, we're all the eldest, right?
Yes, we are.
Yeah,
all
we
the
are,
siblings.
yeah.
We're all
Yeah.
the eldest
Big brothers.
kids.
Yeah,
All
big brothers. Yeah.
So we get the whole drunk thing the hardest, because our parents don't know how
Boundaries,
to
yeah.
Whereas my sister was probably a bit more. Oh, Sam, this
Sam
is what
did it.
happened
He
with
was
Sam.
fine.
Yeah.
He turned out okay.
Yeah.
Again, ties back to that nostalgia thing, because you get to experience when your younger sibling, like my little sister, she's 18, and she's only in the last like 2 years that she didn't do it as early as me. No way. She was quite a good, quite a studious kid, so she's like probably only got there in the last like 2, maybe 3 years.
How old is she now?
Still, she's 18.
Oh, so did it.
So I got to
16.
Yeah, probably. So I got to kind of see that all start to happen, and it's funny, man, because they all have that
Takes you
point where
back.
they come home and
Yeah.
they just absolutely just
Get it so
just
wrong.
kettled,
Yeah.
man, and she's throwing up into the toilet, and we're all just watching her just creasing. Man. It's like, well, that's-
Because you know it's harmless at the end.
yeah,
of the day.
yeah, it's funny.
And you know it's an
we've
important. It's an important.
all, it's
step.
a learning curve, man. We've all been there.
Yeah.
No matter what everyone says, anyone who says they haven't been there is lying.
Yeah. What was the first time you ended up like that?
Arseholed, properly arseholed. I was.
What drink was it as well?
Oh man, Jesus Christ! it was Southern Comfort, and to this day I've still never
still
touched
can't drink
Southern
whiskey,
Comfort
yeah.
ever again. I was 17 years old. We were 17. One of us was 18, and we'd gone to a place in Huddersfield where I'm from called Home Firth, and
Is that like
we'd
a
got.
corner shop?
Huh?
Is that like a corner shop or an area?
Cheeky bastard! It's an area. It's Home Firth. Is it a corner shop? It's an area. It's quite a well off. It's quite a bit of a not poncy, but it's quite like Huddersfield is very like varied, whereas Home Firth is a more prosperous, smaller Huddersfield outside of Huddersfield. So we'd gone there in the aim of having a night out, which was daft because most of us were 17, and then we quickly realised we weren't going to get into any of the clubs or pubs. So we just got one of our friends to go in and buy like a 2 or like 1.5 litre bottle of Southern Comfort, and we just sipped and passed until
It was very
things were gone.
comforting.
And then gradually they'd drop out, and because you don't want to, or I didn't want to look like a us, you kept going until there was only 3 of us drinking, and there was only 2 of us, and I'd had a lot of it, more than I realised, and I just remember just walking around like throwing up everywhere and tasting that sweet whiskey. And like I say, I've never touched it again.
What was your first experience of being too rat-ass to the point where, I don't know, a parent has to come pick you up?
Well, so I never had got to that point because I would always know, but the first time, and mine's quite a funny one. So I had a friend, and his sister was maybe like 3 years older, right? 4 years older than us. Quite a good-looking girl. Yeah. Had good-looking friends. There was a nightclub in the place where I'm from called Bolton, called Level.
The nightclub's called Bolton?
I'm from Bolton. The nightclub's called Level. And she got like a free table and a free bottle of Ciroc.
Ooh, that'll do it.
And I was like 17, that sort of age. I was like, I want to, impress the girls, whatever it is that's going through your head.
Yeah.
Taking these shots, and obviously they're bringing us free drinks because, the good-looking girls are there. And oh man, it hits you, and you are just.
You find yourself a little corner of the club to just go,
I just went to the toilet, and I remember it was one of them where there was like mirrors everywhere. So I'm just like,
you're just looking at yourself like
whoa, and I don't know. It's never been too extreme for me though.
Yeah, I'd like it said that I never had to get picked up by my parents.
I did have to get picked up.
No, that's never happened to me, but I've always found my way home somehow.
I think it's a personality thing. Some guys that
I actually have to be picked up by my parents quite a few times.
I
can think of 3.
3.
The first time was off K-cider. The black can with the K on it.
Oh, yeah, sure.
Horrible stuff. I've never touched a drop. I used to drink it all the time when I was 16, 17. Not all the time, but, most weeks when I was drinking. And then I went to this house party and drank 4.
Jeez.
And they're like 7%. And bearing in mind, 7% to a 16-year-old.
That's like, yeah.
And it absolutely wiped me out. To the point where I went for a pee and locked myself in the toilet. And then passed out mid-pee. So I passed out, trousers down by my ankles, and I passed out. And of course, people need to go to the toilet, right? They unlock the door, and then I'm there, passed out with
saturated in your own piss.
No, there was no mess in that regard. But my ankles were down by and everything was on show, and that was all over Snapchat for the. Yeah. Which in hindsight,
But I want to touch on something here because. Me and Harry were talking earlier before the podcast, and you said to me you maybe have like an addictive personality.
I've got an addictive personality,
and I have friends that are like this where they don't know almost when to. I think you know when to stop. But I feel like maybe someone like people like me and Ben got to a point in our brains when we were drunk where okay, this is too much. I'm going to stop. Whereas maybe you were someone that when you were first starting out would just keep going. And then you'd end up in them, because I've never been in that kind of situation. I never understood it.
Yeah.
Well, I've had ones happen to me more recently, and they're a bit more related to trauma and trying to forget, which I can specifically relate those as the classic sort of forgetting the pain and making the pain go away and all that stuff. And then you take it to the point where, I blacked out quite badly, and your parents can't pick you up. So it's not related to that addictive. I've never had
reliance.
But there is kind of I do notice the fact that when I go through it, when I drink, I go quite hard.
I would say I
don't drink often, but when I do, I will.
Yeah, I don't like half.
It's very Moorish for me.
Yeah. 100%. Like I get to the point. I do get to the point where I think, right, I'm pretty cluttered. I should chill out. But it's not me saying. It's not me saying, all right, and getting a grip. It's my brain saying you feel unpleasant, and it's the natural thing to stop. Whereas in some other things, I wouldn't say I have an addictive personality, but definitely when I'm on a night out, sometimes I'm definitely find myself thinking, I want more. I want to go harder. It depends what sort of night it is and what you
takes you to.
What you're on.
Yeah.
I like in terms of like if I'm with friends and it's a question of weed or something, not necessarily drugs in the sense of like other drugs, but when it was weed, it's always I'd always in the past have been up for doing more, sort of thing.
So I think wrapping it back to nostalgia, I think we went a bit straight there.
Yeah.
So I think I'm going to rope it back in a little bit.
Okay.
We can chalk that off as experimenting, and I think it was very important to experiment at that age. We all came out alive. I know most of my friends came out alive. In specific relation to experimenting, all of them came out alive.
16,
Yeah. So I think that is an important part of any teenager, adolescent who's growing up is to have, that sort of playful rebellion in that field.
Room to try
things, exactly. But yeah, I think now looking back, I want to discuss the ideas of youth cultures, and if you guys, found yourselves in any sort of not movements but subcultures where you were trying to fit in, and you reflected a specific identity that you shared with other people. And because I know that's quite hard for us to do now. I don't see it amongst many of my friends. Sort of a clear identity from a subculture perspective.
Like a scene.
A scene.
I would. One thing that I will always carry with me, and I feel personally very fortunate to have been a part of, was the rave scene in Huddersfield, my local town, my hometown. There was a place there called Basement Studios, which used to do these wonderful, really great, underground, quite small, quite intimate dance raves, dance music.
But legal raves, right?
Yeah. It was a legal event. You needed to be 18 to get in. You got ID on the door. It was just but it was in a small space with people, and it wasn't hugely mainstream. I don't think. Like, you didn't get knobheads there. It was people who liked the music, and the artists they got there were good. They had some pretty big names there at certain times, and that would be something to look forward to. And I remember going and thinking, this is the stuff I'm going to remember when I'm 60 years old, because that scene was it was nothing but love, really. The people there were just good. I have nothing but lovely memories from being a part of that little sphere. And it stopped, I think, the last one in March.
Pre-COVID?
No.
But
no, this was
one that you attended.
Huh?
Have you attended them all the way up till now? Or whenever that
it started back probably in, I don't know, in the 2010s, early 2010s maybe. I think it was going for about 10 years. So I only started going from when I was 18, but over COVID, over lockdown, we started going to them. So I went from 2020 until when it finished in 2023. And it was just, the vibes were immaculate. I still think I've been to a lot of very good, very big clubs, and I still consider that to be easily some of the best nights I've ever had in my entire life, with the people who I love, with the music that's made for people who love the music, performed in front of you with good MCs, good DJs, unreal scenes. Yeah. And I think that, to me, will always encapsulate like that feeling of an actual scene. It was like a family. It did feel like a movement. Yeah. And again, maybe that's rose-tinted glasses, but it was something special that I've never felt again, and probably never will.
Yeah, because when I look at previous generations, and I'm talking generations from 50 years ago, 60 years ago, 70 years ago, there was clear, defined movements of youth subculture that affected a generation. They were important, they mattered, they brought people together.
And they were distinct.
And they gave you pride. When I speak to my dad about him being a disco boy or him being a punk, not quite the outright outrageous punk you see in like Camden today, or the tourist trap punk. But he found himself part of the scene, as I'm sure both of our parents have done. But you don't see that in this day and age. You don't see music being so integrated, music and fashion conjoining together to give a clear identity to the youth of today. I know I didn't experience it. The closest I think I got to that was streetwear, dressing like a roadman, or...
To put it simply, technology, specifically social media, has made that impossible. It's made that impossible. It's made a scene used to be a thing where people, that's how you would identify it with the thing that fit you. You would dress like a goth because you were a goth, and you would see other goths, and you would hang around basically exclusively probably with other goths, whereas now it's all just about everything. I think now is, generally speaking, pretty surface level. People will dress a certain way because they think it looks cool, not because they identify with the scene.
Also, social media means that it's really in the mainstream. And what's good about those subcultures is they were before the mainstream. And as soon as it hit the mainstream, they changed. They moved to something else.
Films and stuff got made about these subcultures. Like even the football one, I think, is...
You've got Green Street.
Films like Green Street.
Because I would say that's that's a culture, not necessarily a youth subculture, but it
Football
is
hooliganism.
football hooliganism. But you've got casual. There's still a strong fashion identity to it.
Yeah, Fred Perry.
Yeah, exactly. Fred Perry, Lionel Scott, Stone Island, TP Company. I don't know. I'm not really part of it, but
I still think it's prevalent. And
it's prevalent.
You see like young 14-year-old lads.
I call it the last youth subculture, really. Footy.
You're probably not far off there, actually. Yeah, because I don't think the rest of them actually exist in their pure form anymore.
Exactly.
I think it's all watered down
Exactly.
by the fact that it's so easy to just think, oh, well, that person looks cool. I'll wear what that person wears to have the same image as them, rather than thinking about the politics of all that. A lot of it was very political. Goths and punks would dress that way because of the way that they saw the world around them and the way that they felt about the policies of their world.
Exactly.
Yeah, so the children of today are more inclined to spend time, I feel like, on TikTok or Fortnite rather than having to go out with no phones. You know, you didn't, when you would play out, but you didn't have a phone with you, nothing like that. You had maybe like 80 pence with you that would sort you out a drink and some
pocket money.
And that'd be your night sorted. You'd play into the evening and then come home knackered.
I wonder if pocket money's still a thing these days, really. Does your sister get pocket money?
My sister?
Yeah.
Little one?
Little one.
No.
So that's interesting.
Pete.
No.
I think my sister might get I think we used to get, sometimes might have been like a tenner a month when we were young. And then it got a bit more when you were like high school age.
Yeah.
I think it's more like if you're going out with your mates for the day.
Yeah, you want a couple quid, don't you?
Buy a little pizza or whatever.
Yeah. All right.
But yeah.
So then, to wrap things up, the final question, or the final chapter, is, and we might not have the best perspective from this because, again, I still think we're in our latter stages of our youth, from my opinion. The question is, do we ever leave our youth?
Well, I think it's somewhat of a mindset youth.
Well, I think this is something we have to look at our parents, and I think specifically dads.
I think that, you know, looking at my dad, certain people bring him back into his youth. Like, he has friends, and I see his personality change completely and I think he enters youth stage, but I think when he's with his wife and his you know, my two younger siblings, he's not in youth.
He's not in youth.
It's almost like you can come in and out of it it's a choice.
So youth seems to be kind of letting your hair down.
I think so.
Shying away from your responsibilities for a moment, where you kind of don't have to.
Having a drink with your mate.
Yeah, having a drink with your
mates. At the pub,
Wait,
talking about good old times.
Do you think that's your raw form? Do you think that's you?
So I think that you can very easily, and for well, you can leave your youth.
Yeah.
But it's whether I don't think your youth will ever 100% leave you.
Yeah.
I think no matter how old and mature you get, there will always be a part of you that remembers the time when you were young and kicking ball about, you know, and having fun. And I think that can always come back to you, no matter who you are. You can always experience things, whether it's a touch, a smell, a taste, any sort of sensation.
I had one today. I had one today, actually. We were playing football at Jack's Sports Club, which is just down the road. And we went in we went to the toilet afterwards, which was actually in the dressing room for the swimming pool, the male dressing room. Yeah. And I used to go there all the time. We used to do swim lessons at school. And I used to go there all the time as a kid. And I hadn't been in that room for about 10 years. How old am I, 23? No, yeah, a bit longer than 10, 15 years actually. And that smell of chlorine, it brought me straight back to being 10 years old again.
Puts a smile on your face.
It did.
So I don't think it leaves you then.
Yeah.
I don't think youth ever leaves. And
that's
your dad, he said that too.
You can leave your youth, but I think your youth is always a part of who you are. You never forget, unless you forgot every single moment of your childhood, then maybe. But and until then, as long as you carry
those unfortunate buggers, you get a sort of dementia or
that's
brain injuries. That
until that point, I think as long as you still carry memories of your childhood with you, I don't think your youth has left you. I think it's still a part of you.
And I think our youth is our rawest versions of ourselves. I think our youth is all the onion layers peeled back, and at the core is our youth.
It's the foundations of who you are.
Yeah.
Also, the youth shapes you. It allows you to look back on your life and also how far you've come. I think it's almost like a comparison tool.
Yeah.
I was once, 13 doing a paper round for £3 a day.
Yeah.
And now I'm here, making a living in London, and it's nice to see that you've leveled up and improved your position in your life.
But you don't forget your roots.
Yeah, you have to turn around and look back to see how far you've come, don't you?
Yeah. And look at a tree. A tree has grown into this wonderful physical thing that's, tall, strong, towering over everything. But the thing that holds it at its core is its roots. It keeps it stable.
Yeah.
It keeps it firm.
If it isn't nourished when it's a seed, then it'll never become a tree.
Exactly.
The biggest trees were little saplings at some point, weren't they? So
Yeah.
It reminds me of something kind of dumb, but you guys probably saw the film Barbie.
Yeah.
There was a bit there when in relation, obviously something kind of foreign to us as blokes, but it's very much about the relationship between mother and daughter.
Yeah.
And there's a bit where she says mothers have to stand still so that the daughters, or I guess broadly children, but daughters is specifically, can move on and then look back to see how far they've come. And I thought that were a beautiful analogy in that film. That were a really touching part of the movie.
Yeah.
Because I think that applies to everything, not just mother and daughter relationships, but child and parent, generally speaking,
And adult self to youth self.
Yeah.
I see that.
It's a great film.
Yeah. It's a good film.
Oh man, it was an unbelievable film.
Yeah.
Very funny.
Very funny.
Very sort of...
But very relatable actually for a man.
Yeah.
Really nice man, very touching. Very touching.
Yeah. But yeah, anyway, is that the final...
That is the final topic.
Right, well,
And I think we'll wrap things up there.
that would do it for episode 1.
Episode 1.
I suppose.
Yeah.